This took place in Moline, Lower Burma. I was a sub-divisional police officer. This took place in Moline, Lower Burma. I was a This took place in Moline, Lower Burma. I was a sub-divisional police officer. In the area, it was very anti-European at the time. So much so that when I was playing football, that the opposing teams would often trip me, and the referees would turn their back and often laugh when I fell on my face. It was just that bad there. The Buddhist priests were the worst though. They'd stand on the corner and just jeer all the Europeans as they passed by. Now I'm anti-imperial, just to start out with, so I was actually for them. You know, I was against British rule there. I was anti-imperial. But sometimes, especially there, you see the dirty work that of the close empire quarters there. I've watched prisoners huddled, stinking cages, cowed faces for a long time prisoners. Often they're scarred butts from being bogged with bamboo. I mean, it was horrible. It just brings you. But I was ill-educated. I didn't know that the empire was dying. You know, I was caught between a rock and a hard place. I really wanted to help these people, but in turn, they would laugh and they would do things to us Europeans because of the anti-European sentiment. One day I got a call about an elephant rampaging in a nearby bazaar. I took my old .44 Winchester, which I knew was too small to go elephant hunting, but I figured maybe I'd just shoot and scare the elephant away. This time was during what they call the must. In North America now, we call that the rut, where the bull elephants go in rut. They go in heat after the females. And this was a tame working elephant that was obviously in must, and it broke away from its chains the night before and got away from its owner, the mahout. And somehow or other, when the mahout went searching for the elephant, he took a wrong turn, and he was some 12 hours away, so something had to be done right now. In general, the Burmese are hopeless. They're unarmed. They really can't fend for themselves, so they expected us to help them out. They relied on us to do the work for them. Now the elephant had destroyed a hut. It went in a couple of fruit stalls, stole the fruits. It killed a cow, and it charged a garbage truck, and it rampaged the garbage truck. Now the Burmese sub-inspector and some constables were waiting for me when I got there. It was a very poor quarter of town. There were a squalid hut thatched with palm leaf on the roofs. There were some women who chased away some half-naked kids. And when I went to go investigate why, I found out that a local man had been killed. It was very muddy, and he must have approached the elephant too closely, and he got trampled to death. His face was smashed into the mud, and you could just see his dead eyes, and his face covered with mud, and mud in his mouth, covering his teeth. You know, they say that the dead look peaceful. After seeing this, I can guarantee you the dead don't look peaceful. So I sent an orderly to a friend's house because I knew my gun was too small and not large enough caliber. I sent my orderly to my friend's house to get me an elephant gun and some cartridges that can take care of the elephant if need be. All along, the whole population followed me. They wanted to see what I was going to do. They wanted to see if I was going to chicken out or if I was going to follow through with my duties. And I didn't want to really kill the elephant. It really wasn't causing problems. It was just in must, And I figured that a day or two, it'd come out of must and it'd be back to tame elephant, and maybe even wander back to home, or the mahout would come and find him and take him home. I knew I shouldn't kill it because it also was a working elephant. It's just like destroying a huge and expensive piece of farm machinery if I killed the elephant. And it was just peacefully eating there, and I was going to watch and see what it did, and hopefully it'd just go on home. But a crowd gathered around me, and the people expected for me to do something about it. And, I had to impress the natives, and I had to do what they wanted. A sahib has to act like a sahib. Every white man's life in the East was a lot like struggle not to be laughed at, and I didn't want to be laughed at. I waited, again, I didn't want to shoot, and I watched him eat, and because I figured if I shot him, it'd almost be like murder, and I didn't want to do that. It seemed wrong to kill a large animal. I have no problem killing animals, and just for some strange reason, killing a large animal just seems wrong. I asked how the locals how it behaved, and they told me that if you left it alone, it was peaceful, but that if you tried to approach it, it might charge you. I thought I'd walk to about 25 yards, and if he charged me, I'd shoot it. If it didn't charge me, I'd just wait for the mahout. But I wasn't afraid like the ordinary afraid. I was afraid that white men shouldn't be afraid in front of natives, but I thought if something went wrong, 2,000 Burmese would see me pursued, caught, trampled, reduced to a grinning corpse. If that happened, some would laugh. That just wouldn't do. The rifle that my friend had was a beautiful German thing. It had some crosshair sights on it, and the elephant was standing sideways. I should have aimed between the ears, but I aimed about a couple inches forward, thinking that the brain would come out in front of its head. When I pulled the trigger, I laid down in the mud to get a good grip and good steady rest. And when I pulled the trigger, I didn't hear the bang, and I didn't feel the recoil. I just heard the thud when the bullet struck the elephant. He neither stirred nor he fell. But every line in his body looked altered. They looked stricken, shrunken, immensely old, like he was 1,000 years old. And he was paralyzed, but without falling over. After a long time, which was probably only about 5 seconds, he sagged flabbily to his knees. His mouth slobbered. Senility overcame him, getting like he was about 1,000 years old. I fired into the same spot, but he didn't collapse. He actually climbed with desperate slowness to his feet. He stood weakly upright, his legs sagging and his head drooping. I fired a third shot. Then I saw his agony jolt in his whole body. It kind of knocked the last remnants out of his legs. His hind legs collapsed, and it's almost like he was standing up. But as his back legs fell, he slowly got to his foot, and his legs were sagging and drooping, and his trunk went skyward, almost like a tree. Then he trumpeted his first, last, and only time. He came down with a crash, with his belly toward me, and the crash just shook the ground. The Burmese started racing past me. It was obviously he was never going to rise again, but he still wasn't dead. Breathing rhythmically, long, rattling gasps. His mouth was wide open. I could see far down his throat into the caverns of the peakness inside. I waited for a long time for him to die, but his breathing did not weaken. I fired my 2 remaining shots into the place I thought his heart was. Blood welled up like red velvet. But he still didn't die. He was dying very slowly, in great agony. But in some remote world where not even a bullet would damage him further, I felt I had to put an end to this dreadful noise. He was powerless to move, yet he was powerless to die. I sent for my rifle, even though I knew it was too small. I poured another shot into his heart and then down his throat. But it seemed to make no impression whatsoever. The tortured gasp continued as steadily as a ticking clock. I couldn't stand it anymore, and so I went away. I heard that it took him about a half hour to die. Burmans brought dahs and baskets, and before I left, they raced to the elephant, and they had his body almost skinned to the bone before the afternoon. When I got back to my office, there was endless discussions about the shooting. I knew that the owner was going to be furious, but he was an Indian, and he couldn't do anything. It was legal. I did the right thing. Mad elephants have to be killed like mad dogs if their owners can't control them. Among the Europeans, many of the opinions were divided. The older men thought I did the right thing, and the younger men, thought I wasted the elephant. They said it was a damn shame to shoot an elephant just for killing a coolie. Because an elephant was worth more than a Corrigan coolie. I was glad it did kill the coolie because it put me legally in the right. And it gave me sufficient pretext for shooting the elephant. I often wonder if any others grasped that I had done it solely to avoid looking like the fool.